Shane Jones and agree with much he said, and indeed that the Honourable David Parker said in what I think was an excellent speech. And I don't want to sound a sour note after hearing from them and their good speeches, but I do have to say, and I'm not going to let it pass, the really Labour Party revisionism in this area, that somehow this was all Don Brash's fault, or somehow all Winston Peters' fault, because it is a matter of historical record, and the NZPA, the day after the Court of Appeal's Ngāti Apa decision recorded, Helen Clark is saying that the government would legislate to preserve, if necessary, the status quo in this area, and that this was a matter of policy for the government, not a matter for the courts. And so to say that this somehow was because Labour had no choice and this was iwi, not Kiwi billboards that brought this is simply not the case. Labour should take its share of blame and its share of the history on this, just like I accept the National Party should as well. But I don't want to look backwards. I think this is a very positive day for this country. And you know, I accept the... I want to come back to the Ministerial Review Panel, Hannah O'Regan, Richard Boast and Sir Eddie Jury, who did say, and I think this is something Shane Jones picked up on, there really have been some very polar opposite views in this area between some Maori who saw the 2004 Act, perhaps rightly so, as highly discriminatory, and those Pākehā, perhaps that David Garrett speaks for, who also, and many Pākehā, and I don't call them racist because I don't think they are, but who saw, and perhaps still do to some extent, see the repeal of the 2004 legislation as racially divisive. But what the review panel also said is we in this country have a duty to achieve a sort of a balance between those competing interests, a compromise, if you like, and I think we do that in this bill between, or with two key concepts. Firstly, access to justice, which I think really does get to a core interest for Māori and iwi in this country to go to the courts, to have their claims heard, but also public access and the uninhibited right of all New Zealanders, Māori and non-Māori, to enjoy the beaches and so on. I think the review panel talked about that as a bedrock right of New Zealanders. And so it is a compromise, but it's, I believe, a principled compromise. And some might say, well, that's an oxymoron, that you can't have a principled compromise. David Clendon, I think, for the Greens, would have us believe that really you can't have that. But I say that you can, and that in fact in this bill, what we are really doing is entirely in accordance with the law, with the Court of Appeal's Ngāti Apa decision, and of course that decision was the Court of Appeal overturning, and I think rightly so. I hear the arguments that maybe it could have or should have gone to the Privy Council, but overturning the 90-mile beach decision, and we here get back to that decision, the tests set in that. We are in a principled way reaching a compromise, in some ways the way the Court of Appeal did. And the bar will be set high in the law that we set out, just as it was in the Court of Appeal's decision for iwi. But that's actually as it should be. We get back to that Court of Appeal decision, not more, not necessarily less. And I think here in this piece of legislation we have a balanced law. We have a law that is one of compromise, but I think of principled compromise. And I agree actually with a lot that David Parker said. Let us hope that it's a compromise that is enduring and once and for all, Mr. Speaker.